Welcome to the Word for Life podcast, a daily devotional covering the entire Bible from Genesis to Revelation.
In Exodus chapter 3, God meets Moses through a burning bush. God wants him to go to Egypt and deliver his people from slavery. Now, this must have been a great news for Moses because 40 years ago, when he was in Egypt, that was his dream. Moses saw the misery of his people, was concerned about their suffering, tried to rescue them, and even killed one of the slave drivers who was hitting a Hebrew man. Moses really wanted to show his people that he could save them. But now God clearly called him from a burning bush and said the same thing. In verse 7, the Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians. And now God said, Moses, go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But do you know what Moses said to God? Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? You see, Moses, after his 40-year exile in Midian, is now aware of the reality. When he was in Egypt 40 years ago, he thought it was easy to deliver Israel, but he now knows the truth. It is almost impossible for him to do that. But Moses was wrong again. God was not asking him to do the rescuing. God was telling him that he will do the rescuing. But Moses, even now, was focusing only on himself. Friends, many times we see our weaknesses, our problems, our realities, and therefore we lose hope. God is asking us to see who He is. And that is why in this chapter, so many times and in so many ways, God said who He was. Look at verse 14. God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you have to say to Israelites. I am has sent me to you. Look at verse 15. God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. And in verse 16, go assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, appeared to me. And in verse 18, then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So many times again and again, God talked to Moses about himself and revealed who he was. Friends, we too need a revelation of who God is. We have a very good grasp of who we are, how weak we are. We also know how the situation is bad, how many obstacles we are facing. But do we know who God is? Let me show you the problem with Moses. When he first went near the burning bush, and even in verse 6, God said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Do you know what Moses did? Moses was not excited, but he only hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. This only tells us that Moses did not have any connection with God, or he lost his relationship with God at this point. He did not even know God. That is why God in this chapter gave him so many revelations of himself. Friends, when we seek God, He will reveal Himself to us and show us who He is. And that alone, my friends, will build our faith and confidence.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow for the next episode of the Word for Life podcast.